Hi, I'm outside today because we're talking about glaciers and it's kind of chilly out. But I have my little torches behind, and because it's chilly out, that's all the steam, but it's also wants to keep the mosquitoes away, the Janella, and it's not a lot of mosquitoes out today. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about glaciers, and I'll do a little bit of teaching about how glaciers work and how they are formed and what happens and how they scrape the ground away. And that's at the end of this video, or continuing with this video. And after that, I have 4 videos for us to watch. The first one is, it's National Geographic, and it shows the different types of glaciers. It's about 4 minutes long. It's really good. And it kind of just like, this is how glaciers work. This is where they are. This is what they look like. That's great. And from yesterday, or 2 days ago, when we last had science, we had talked about what happens if the Earth heats up and the glaciers start to melt. And that's the second video. It's an ASAP video. Actually, Bill Nye is with the ASAP video guys and talks about what would happen or what happens to the oceans if the glaciers do melt, if the polar ice caps melt. And that can be kind of scary, as you saw from the last time when we watched the videos on that. Third video is one where this guy named James Balog, he's a photographer, and he would go out and photograph like animals and into wildlife, and then he kind of got into the idea about like going in and taking pictures of ice. And then once he started taking pictures of the ice, he realized that these glaciers are going back. They are retreating. In other words, they're melting. And he thought, like, well, maybe I should do a time lapse of this. So he went to different spots throughout the world and put cameras up and then showed the time lapse as to what was happening with the glaciers as they were melting. And we usually watch a show. It's called Chasing Ice. It's a movie, and we watch that in class, and it takes 3 class periods to watch it. We won't be able to. A news channel did a story on him, and that's what we'll see, and it shows some of the highlights from that. The 4th video is just really cool. At the end of glaciers, when they end, they kind of, sometimes they're abrupt and then there's ocean or there's water down below, and then they fall off. They break off. It's calving or calving. I think they call it calving in that video. It's the end of the big chunks of it fall off, and if they fall in the ocean, they become like icebergs. But there was a really huge one in Greenland that they just happened to catch. And this is the picture of it. It is super cool. It's in this movie, but take a look at it. I have 3 questions after that. They're based on the movies or the videos, and you can just make sure you watch them and watch what I have for you, and then we should be pretty sad. This might seem kind of strange, but this is my glacier, and here's how glaciers work. It starts to snow, and usually when it's snowing in the summertime, the snow will melt, and then that all goes away. So for glaciers, because the earth is cooling, that snow that's there, it doesn't melt. Some of it will melt, but not all of it will, because it's cooler. So once the stuff that doesn't melt the next year, more of that snow gets piled up on it, and some more closer because it's cooler down here. Some more of it goes a little further, and it doesn't melt either. So in the summertime, the next summer, some of it will melt, but not that much. And then over days and days and days and days and years and years and years, the snow starts to pile up, and that snow will pile up and up until it's really pretty far up. So they say around here, that snow might have been like a mile thick. But now what happens is that the snow, when it's pressed down, isn't really snow anymore. It kind of gets squished into ice. So it gets squished into ice. Now there's all this weight that's on the snow, and all the weight that's on that ice pushes down, and there's more ice up on the other way, so it forces that snow to leave to go down. And that's how a glacier moves. So in the next year, more snow falls down, and the glacier gets taller, and it gets heavier, and it squishes more, and it keeps squishing and squishing and squishing. So again, with all the snow that comes up, kind of gets heavier, and just like this Play-Doh stuff or whatever I made, it gets squished down and there's more ice on the top. It forces it down and forces it down and it forces it down. And as it's pushing down, forcing it down, it's actually scraping the ground and scraping the rocks off the ground. It's scraping the soil off the ground, and it's kind of forcing it and taking it down further. There are a couple different types of glaciers that come through. One is the Alpine Glacier. That's usually one that goes through like mountains, and it'll carve out valleys, and then there's usually rivers at the bottom of it. Over time, it does carve through the mountains. This is kind of an example of an alpine one, although it's a lot wider than normal. So this is kind of a mix between an alpine glacier and then a continental glacier. I'll show you a continental glacier later. Our first video talks about the different types of glaciers, and it gives some examples, and it shows some really nice pictures of those. This is an example of a continental glacier, and for this continental glacier, this would be like over a long period of time. The snow fell, and then the weight of it crushed it down so that it all turned to ice. And glaciers are all fresh water because it comes from the snow. It's not from the salt water. It's not from melting down below. It is just snow piled up, and it snows more and it snows more, and it squishes it down, turns it to ice, and just as I showed you, kind of squishes it forward. This would be the end of this glacier, and usually at the end of the glacier there's water, that because the glacier might be melting, and it does melt, and that's pretty normal. It'll melt, and in the summertime it goes down a little bit, and then in the wintertime it can form back up again. But over like ice ages 1.2 million years ago, there was so much snow, and the temperature of the earth was a lot cooler, that the glaciers just kept going and going and going. Now at the end of the glaciers, as you can see on the end here, they fall off and they make like icebergs that go in, and that's called calving. And our last video shows a huge calving or calving of a glacier where it just breaks off and goes into the ocean, and that's not really a good thing for us with the global warming issues. I had said earlier in this video that there was like a mile full of ice, or straight up in the air, like a mile up, 5,000 feet up, just of ice. Just imagine snow piled up a mile and then squished down. That actually wasn't where we are. I think this is a great picture of what happened with our last glacier. About 20,000 years ago, glaciers had moved down, and as they were coming down, they were pushing down, and more snow landed on top of them, and they pushed more, and it kept pushed more, and it ended up pushing all the way into North America, down below. Now this last ice age, they have names for these glaciers. This was the Wisconsin glaciation. I don't know, because it came through Wisconsin first. Lake Superior was there. Lake Superior is pretty deep, about 700-800 feet deep. Because Lake Superior was so deep, the ice took longer. The snow took a while to fill up the lake before it could pile up on top of that. And because it filled up in the lake, it left a little area where it was slower than the rest, a little area open. And that's our area, and we're called the Driftless Region. And there was not a mile of snow above us. There wasn't any ice at all around us, because Lake Superior slowed as it was filling up. It slowed the snow down, it slowed the glaciers down, so it missed us totally. And that's why we call ourselves the Driftless Region, which means the glaciers didn't hit us. It's a great map of it. Here's another one. And then this is just another map. It shows where the states are and where it goes down to. It goes all the way down to, this is Missouri and Kentucky, through some of Ohio. That's the part that wasn't. All of Illinois. And then over here too, it carved away the land as the glaciers were going. It pushed it through, flattened things out. There were mountains. They became just like bumps. They call them drumlins. Those are on the other side of the state. But for us, right here, we didn't have it. We're the Driftless Region. This is what the land looked like before the glaciers came in and flattened everything out.